If you grew up where mom made everything okay, was that helpful or not so helpful? Let's talk about that today. So there's a mama's boy or daddy's girl. Let's just zoom in on a mother doing everything for one of her kids. Is that going to be helpful? Well, not really, because part of finding one's identity, part of growing up and realizing if you're a boy, how to become a man and what that means, same applies for a girl, for them to find their identity and not feel like they have to role model their mother for everything. You have to let the kid develop on their own. You just can't do everything for them and make everything okay. Part of a healthy identity development includes that the kid needs to have a lot of failures. That's how they're going to grow. It's trial and error, and that's important in terms of learning what we're all about. Yes, a parent can guide and lead, of course, when the kid is little and up to a certain stage, but guiding and leading is different from making everything okay, from trying to soothe everything, make everything happen for them, trying to remove any problems they may be going through, making them the little prince or princess, not letting them just fall down either symbolically or literally, and learning what that's about. Now that's when the kid grows up just thinking that they have to mirror back to that parent anything the parent wants mirrored back to them, because that's how they know everything's okay. That's how they get the approval that a little kid needs, right? When you're only 3 or 4 or 5 years old, you're in this house, you don't know about the world, you're very young, you're not understanding what's going on, you're thinking this is normal, and so if you have a mother that's taking you over, you're just going to kind of go along with it unless you have the spouse of that parent come in and rescue you and stand up to the perpetrating parent. Then things can change, it can get better at that point. But oftentimes either the emotionally smothering parent is perhaps a single parent, or they're in a relationship or marriage where the significant other is not willing to stand up to them, and then the perpetrating parent has their way with their child. So in turning them into their little mini husband or mini wife, that child is like a sacrificial lamb, because that child is in essence turning their life over to that parent. They're so focused on being what the parent wants them to be that their own development is thwarted, and they don't get to know who they are. They don't know what they're all about. Now, where emotional incest is on the extreme side of that spectrum, we can also look on the other side of the spectrum where maybe it's more mild, but it's still going to hurt the child. Because how kids grow is they have to learn on their own. If you're a helicopter parent who just zooms in there and tries to solve all their problems, you're really hurting them in the long run. Now, the offending parent could be doing that for a variety of reasons. It could be something as simple as they didn't get that when they were a child. They felt maybe abandoned or ignored. So when they decided to have children, they said, by God, it's going to be different. I'm going to jump in there and really help my child, not realizing that they're actually doing more harm than good. Or it could be because there's competition between the husband and wife in terms of who gets the most accolades, of who gets the most attention. So they're trying to outdo each other in a very toxic marriage. Or on some level, they're thinking if I spoil my kid when they grow up, they're going to be there for me. They're going to take care of me. They're not going to let me go to a nursing home. Or it could be the parent is like a type A personality where they just do a lot, they accomplish a lot in their own life, and therefore they're used to just taking control. Maybe they have a job, their career involves a lot of control. Maybe they're a manager, and so now they think I have to manage my child, I have to take them over. It's not going to be helpful. Or it could be just for appearance sakes. Maybe the marriage is halfway decent, but they want the world and their family to think like they're the ideal family. So it's about appearance versus reality. It's how others see them in their mind, and that is of the utmost importance to them. Or as I mentioned earlier, it could be just that the marriage is horrible and they don't know what to do. They don't deal with the marriage, and so they decide, I'm going to take over my son or my daughter and make them my little mini partner and drag them to events and take them to lunch and tell them all my adult problems. And if this starts at an early age, a child is kind of a goner because they're not going to know anything different, and they don't even know that they should rebel because it's so normal to them. The child may feel very uncomfortable and feel very off, but if this is starting at age 4 or 5 or something, then the child may not realize this until they're a teenager. Now, some ways a kid will rebel when they get to be a teenager is they want to rebel and they want there to be a contrast with the offending parent especially. They're going to need to prove to themselves that they are separate, that there's a separate identity to them than what they're learning from the smothering parent. And so part of creating that contrast means that they're going to do anything, sometimes something they really don't even necessarily want to do, but they're going to do it to prove a point to the parent. Another way they may rebel is just by simply pulling away, wanting nothing to do with you, because they're going to somehow act out what's in their heart. They may not have the words for it, so they're going to act it out. And the acting out means they're going to pull away physically and emotionally. And also that child may become very argumentative, very critical of the parent, really questioning them all the time, trying to make them prove their worth. And the parent is wondering, where's this coming from? Because I'm trying to do everything for them. I'm trying to make their life easy. But to the kid, especially if you're a teenager, you're thinking, leave me alone. Let me form my own identity here. Let me grow up. And when the parent won't let them do that, then they're going to be perhaps critical, argumentative, or whatever. Now, if a kid is very smothered and is a victim of emotional incest, they may never rebel in any way, shape, form, or matter. And that's when you know it's a really serious case, and that's where that child is very emotionally damaged. And I know I went through that myself in my life, and I needed a lot of therapy as I got older to deal with all that childhood trauma. But for other kids who are not quite as damaged, they're going to want to cause a lot of conflict between them and their parent or parents. And that's actually very healthy. In a therapist's office, if a family came in for a family session and I heard that from one of the kids, if that's what the family's talking about, that would be a sign of healthiness, because the child is trying to reclaim themselves. They're trying to get in touch with who they really are and what they're all about. And if you have a teenager who's going through this, don't try to argue them out of this. Don't try to confront them, because they're just probably going to dig their heels in deeper. And you have to remember that this is probably a result of you trying to make everything okay. And now they have to fight for who they are. So yes, for you parents out there, it's okay to simply state your viewpoint, set up the parameters for any kids who live in your household until they're out on their own and they can get their own place, and then back off. They have to find their own way in life. Now, I mentioned this can be from a father to a son or daughter, or a mother to a son or daughter, but oftentimes the conflict is usually more directed towards the mother, because in general, and this is kind of a stereotype, but in general, the mother, of course, is more relational, whereas the father is more about the performance. So a child may not feel so smothered by meeting performance requirements, but may feel very smothered by reaching for relational requirements. So the relational requirements that the child is feeling is that they have to be what you, the parent, wants them to be. And oftentimes it's more common with a relational parent versus a performance parent. But in this case, if a parent is relating more to a child from a performance point of view, this can cause problems of its own. So it's about staying in the gray area with anything I've been bringing up here. This can cause problems of its own, because now they think they have to do things, or it's by their behavior how they win someone's love. And also, a performance-based kind of parent may see that child as an extension of their own self, and therefore get really upset or angry if the child is not meeting the expectations that the performance-based parent thinks they should be meeting. So it's a slippery slope, and you have to be very careful. And for the relational-based parent, the child, as he or she is growing up, may be so sick of hearing about your adult problems. You always want to talk to them. You always want to share. Well, if you're dealing with a teenage boy especially, they don't want to hear everything you have to say, nor is it healthy for them to hear everything you have to say. They don't want to hear about your problems at work with your coworkers. They don't need to hear about how you're getting a new hairdresser because they don't like your old one. They don't need to hear about your problems with your in-laws or with your significant other. All that adult stuff needs to be handled with adults. Don't lay that on your child, because it's only going to cause problems and it's going to hurt their development. So I hope I've helped some of you realize you don't have to make everything okay for your child. Just be loving and kind and fair-minded, and then let them find their path on their own. Please leave me some comments below. Love to hear if this is something you've dealt with in your household. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.